Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Tanya Nash, and I'm the board president of the Autism Faith Network. We are excited to have James and Tasandra Washington with us as our special guests. James and Tasandra Washington have spent nearly 8 years building a marriage rooted in love, faith, and resilience. As parents to two wonderful children, one with special needs, they have navigated the joys and challenges of family life with unwavering dedication. Their journey has been shaped by the realities of raising a child with unique abilities, advocating for his needs, and fostering an environment where both of their children can thrive. James brings a thoughtful and compassionate perspective as a father, drawing from both personal experience and his background as an educator. He understands firsthand the importance of advocacy, patience, and creating a support system that allows children to flourish. Tasandra, with her deep passion for special needs advocacy, has embraced the role of both mother and mentor, working tirelessly to ensure her child receives the best possible resources and opportunities. Together, they have become a source of inspiration for other parents navigating similar paths, openly sharing their experiences to uplift and empower families facing the realities of special needs parenting. Through their journey as husband and wife, James and Tasandra have learned the importance of partnership, communication, and grace. Whether celebrating small victories, overcoming obstacles, or simply finding joy in everyday moments, they remain committed to strengthening their bond while raising their children in a loving and supportive home. Their story is one of perseverance, growth, and devotion, not just to each other, but to the family they nurture and cherish every day. We are thrilled to have the Washington family as our special guests. I believe that their expertise in the education system and journey into parenthood will give us profound insight on raising, supporting, and advocating for children with disabilities. Welcome, James and Tasandra.
Hey, thank you for
Hi.
having us.
Yeah. All right. Tell us a little bit about yourselves and your family.
So, my name is Tasandra. This is James Washington. We've been married for about 8 years,
Almost 8 years.
almost 8 years in July. And we have two children. We have our son Adley, and our daughter Ava.
Ava's the baby. That's our 2-year-old. Adley is 5 years old, and he has been diagnosed with autism, epilepsy, and also a condition known as ventriculomegaly.
I am an assistant principal at an elementary school, and I support the special education department at that school.
I also work in education. I work as an English teacher. I've been doing that for this is year 7 for me. I work at the high school level.
We met at Valdosta State University
Yes, met
several
in
years
college.
ago.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So, you all mentioned that Adley has been diagnosed with ventriculomegaly, autism, and epilepsy. When did you first start to have concerns about Adley's development?
So the journey really began when I was pregnant. At my 20-week ultrasound, the ultrasound tech didn't tell me exactly what was wrong, but kind of determined something was going on in utero. And so I was sent at that time to a specialist who did some different scans, and she had told me that his ventricles and the back of his head were enlarged. And he was, at that time, is when we were introduced to the ventriculomegaly. And so at that point in time, I kind of knew that he was going to be born with some type of delays. Um, didn't know the extent of those delays, but that's where the journey really began for us.
And the
Okay.
condition, it also basically leads to buildup of fluid on the brain. And because of where those ventricles are located, that's what we were told would be some of the results. There would be possible motor delays, speech delays, and things like that. So we did know ahead of time a little bit of what we might be dealing with.
Okay. And then when did you start to notice the signs of autism and epilepsy?
So the autism, because of my background in special education,
Mhm.
when Adley was about 2 years old, I started to notice just basic things. He wasn't looking, at us in the face. He wasn't recognizing his name. Just different developmental and social cues kind of topped me off as to, I think something is going on. And so I kind of pushed the pediatrician at the time to get an evaluation so that we could start getting those services when he hit 3 years old. The epilepsy started when he was 1 years old, and he had his first seizure when we were in Walmart.
Mm.
Never forget it. That would have been Christmas Eve of 2021.
Mhm.
Okay.
We were in the store just grabbing some last minute things. I
Mhm.
was pushing the cart, and Tassandra was handling the stroller. And Adley had been asleep in the car on the way to the store. So we're both just assuming, okay, maybe he's still sleepy, he's doing his thing.
Mhm.
But, mom noticed and she said, no, something doesn't seem right. And, he was kind of, staring off and just not responsive at all. And once we realized things were, there's a problem, we just grabbed him, left the groceries, ran out of the store. And we were maybe 5 minutes out of Walmart and he started physically seizing. So we called 911, had to pull over, and that was where that whole thing first started because up to that point we hadn't seen anything like that. So that's when the worry first kicked in.
Okay. So that's a lot. So, you knew about the ventriculomegaly,
Mhm.
and then a year later, that's when, the epilepsy came into play. And then maybe a year after that, estimated, that's when you started seeing the signs of autism. Any of those three things would be a lot to have to adjust to. um what was your learning curve like with caring for him in these medical conditions, and how did you adapt to this new normal?
It was a lot. I thought for me it would be a little bit easier with having the background of special education, but
Mhm.
I will never forget when my mom and I actually went to the Marcus Autism Center to get his evaluation completed, and just hearing the doctor say, your child has autism, your child has level 3 autism at that. And so that's when I learned that there was a least to a more severe diagnosis of autism. And just hearing some of the things that were said as far as may never speak, may never, really have friends or think people that understand. It was really a tough. Uh, it was just tough for me to digest. So yeah.
Yeah, pretty similar. I mean, it's one of those things where everyone wants the best for their child. So when you hear those kind of things, it's almost like you don't want to feel sorry for them because they haven't done anything wrong. So it was definitely a lot to take on. Um, but just really leaning on each other and knowing that neither one of us is doing it alone has helped tremendously over the years.
So you both work in the education system. How have you been able to use your skills and your training, your expertise in education to help with the care of Adley?
So for me, just knowing earlier on, knowing that Georgia has the Babies Can't Wait program and needing to have that diagnosis and having the early interventions in place was very important. And so I just pushed to ensure that he had all of the evaluations completed so that we could get our services started. And then just with my, background, making sure I'm hunting for all the therapies that are out there. He was in play therapy. He's done, speech, occupational, physical therapy. He's receiving ABA therapy. So just knowing how to tap into these resources has helped, especially being in the field.
And in addition to that, I mean, I credit Tassandra all the time for having the background and knowing a lot of these things because I would have been absolutely clueless.
Mhm.
I am a researcher. I do like to look into things, but I'm like even having a starting point
Mhm.
just makes it that much better and makes it easier. And then the benefit with being an English teacher, working in journalism, I love to write. So
Mhm.
a lot of times, what will happen is Tassandra will be like, "Hey, I found this advantage. I found something that we can do," and then she'll bring me a stack of paper and she's like, "Fill these out." And I'm
Mhm.
like, "I'll do whatever I have to.
Right.
You've done the legwork, so
Right.
let me get to it."
Teamwork.
Yes.
Okay, so what words of wisdom would you share with parents who are trying to advocate for their child with a disability in the education system?
For me, it would just be don't give up. You have so many people that have so much advice to
Mhm.
provide to you. And when you're not living it, it looks very different. And so, just having, especially mothers, and speaking just from a mother, go with your intuition, trust your gut, and don't give up and just keep pressing forward, because it's a hard journey, and it's one that not the typical mom necessarily has to navigate, but we were obviously given this role for a reason. So just being able to push forward would be the advice that I would give.
And kind of on the same thing, I would just say, um, remember your why. Like
Mhm.
so many days you might want to stop. You might want to give up, or you're like, I can't do this today. Just remember that there's somebody depending on you that can't do it for themselves. So they're always going to need you. And with that in mind, too, which I think it's definitely been difficult for me at times, don't be afraid to ask for help.
Mhm.
There's more people out there that want to help than you might know. So they need you to voice that because they don't know what to do. But if you tell them, I need you to help me do this, or can you help me with that? More often than not, those people are going to be willing to help because they see the kind of effort that you're putting in on your own.
Mhm. Mhm.
So, having a strong support system is very important for special needs families. It's really easy to get isolated. So, tell me, what kind of support have you received from your family, your friends, your church or local community, and how has that been helpful to you?
I think we've been very lucky and very blessed. We have a strong tribe. We have a strong
Hmm.
village.
Mhm.
Very earlier on, with just being younger parents and navigating life with Adley before we even had Ava, we realized we need a close village. And so that helped us to even move from where we were before. We were about an hour away from my family who lives in the metro area. And we just knew that we needed to move closer because we needed that help. And so we've really just been blessed with, my with both sets of parents, but with mine being closer, coming over to babysit, watch the kids, and also just taking an understanding of, like the epilepsy, how to administer the medicine, what signs to look for. So we've been really blessed in that area.
I will say her mother is everything. Like mine loves to help too, but at this point now she's 4 hours away,
Mhm.
so it's not as easy for her. But
Mhm.
yes, her mother, unbelievable. Like it's to the point where half the time she's asking us, or they're not even asking us.
Mhm.
She's telling us what she's going to come do before we even realize we need it.
Mhm.
So she might, pick up the phone and all of a sudden she'll be like, "Hey James, I was wondering if this," and I was like, "Sure, that'd be nice." And she's like, "Okay, well, I'm in the driveway." So it's like you don't realize how valuable that is until you're in the moment. Like we would be so lost without her and without everybody, but especially her.
Definitely.
You brought up something really good where you said that your mother-in-law or Tassandra's mother, she actually does things that she anticipates that you need. And
Mhm.
so that takes away some of the thinking that you have to do to express your needs. And so I was wondering along those lines, like, what for special needs families like yours, What are some of the things that a community member or a friend could do for you that would be such a blessing? Because a lot of times people want to help, just like you were mentioning earlier, James, people want to help you, but they don't know what to do. And so they ask you, and then you're so overwhelmed with all of the things that it's kind of hard to pinpoint one thing. But if you had time to just think of a perfect world, what would be a great way that a friend or a family member could support a family like yours?
That's a good question. Um, wow.
Yeah.
I just like you said, that's one of those things where being put on the spot and asked, I honestly have no idea.
Yes.
There's so much. But I guess in a perfect world, and this is probably where Kalia kind of comes in,
Mhm.
is just having somebody that's able to be there to help out, that's also not necessarily trained, but familiar enough to where if, say, we wanted to go grab dinner or if we just wanted to go for a walk, like we can leave
Yeah.
and feel comfortable knowing that Adley is in the hands of somebody where we don't have to worry. And that's been a big benefit, because we actually do have someone very helpful in that regard right now.
Right. Yeah, along those same lines, I was trying to think in my head what would be, something that I would need. But absolutely, just time. Even if somebody just came over and they were like, "Hey, you guys take a nap, take some time, go to your room, lay down for a moment." Just being able to be willing to be there to help support us in that way, because it becomes overwhelming, and I think for a lot of us parents, just having a moment of time to just recoup and get ourselves back together, is so valuable. So yeah.
And I think one of the big things in that regard, I don't know if you can relate, but from the parent side, a lot
Mhm.
of times it's like you don't want to feel like you're being a burden to
Mhm.
anybody.
Yeah.
It's not that you
Hmm.
think you can do it alone. It's more so like I'll feel like I might feel like I'm inconveniencing somebody else. Like
Right.
this isn't their fight per se. So
Right.
we're gonna handle this. And I know I'm guilty of that a lot. Like a lot of times I just won't ask for help because I'm like, no, this is my job.
Hmm.
So I'm gonna do it. And then that leads to that burnout.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, and too, like as special needs parents, a lot of us, we just, we're just so used to doing everything, but it takes a while to kind of understand that being a good mom, being a good dad is also allowing other people to help us so that we can refresh, so that we can continue to be the best mom and the best dad possible because we're energized, we're well rested, our minds are clear, and somebody else has been able to take on some of the day-to-day tasks that
Right.
Yeah.
we have to deal with. Okay. So you all have a lot going on. I know it can be a juggling act to try and take care of all of Adley's different needs and, also balancing that with your beautiful daughter, Ava. She's young, a 2-year-old toddler. And so how do you balance the two, between Adley's needs and Ava's needs?
I've been trying to be a lot more intentional with making sure that each child gets their time to be themselves and to explore in their own ways. So recently what I've been trying to do is meet other mom friends locally, that have children around the same age range, specifically for Ava, so that she can also have some playmates and we can go do things. So for example, on Saturdays when James may take Adley to his speech therapy, I'll use that time to go and take Ava to the park and have her run around and just spend some mommy daughter time together. So I'm trying to be a lot more intentional in making sure that both kids have individualized time with either one of us, to meet their needs.
And I feel like the big benefit when we're seriously blessed is that
Hmm.
Ava is the kind of kid where she pays very close attention to Adley.
She does.
So
Hmm.
because of that, she understands that he needs different attention, and
Hmm.
she'll even go out of her way to try to help at 2 years old already.
Right.
A few months ago, when he had one of his episodes, he was having a seizure.
Hmm.
We had administered the medicine. He was laying down, and next thing you know, she's like pushing through us and she's putting her hand on his back saying, "It's okay.
Mhm.
It's okay." Like she pays very close attention to him.
Right.
So I think that really helps us a lot too, is because
Yes.
she understands his time is valuable, and she's not the type of kid. She can get jealous, but she doesn't really get that way when it comes to him.
Right.
So that's helped us out a lot.
Yeah. Mhm.
That's beautiful to see that, she's starting to understand that, hey, my brother may need a little extra care and I can help, I can
Right.
come in and provide comfort,
Yes.
even at 2 years old. That is such a blessing to hear, you
Mhm.
know. So it seems like you all may have modeled age appropriate ways for her to learn about the fact that her brother may need more care. Um, what advice will you have for parents who are trying to do that, trying to teach a sibling about the care needs of another sibling?
Hmm. I think for me, we watch a lot of shows that, and we have a lot of things around our house that promote diversity, inclusion, equity, or whatnot. And so she's constantly seeing things in her natural environment
Mhm,
that show kids with varying needs. We'll have pictures of kids, some in wheelchairs, some, some with communication AAC devices. Around our house, we have core boards. And so she's seeing these things constantly. She sees how we communicate and work with Adley. And so I think for other families, if they could just make it a natural part of their other child's daily living, it doesn't become some type of facade. It's more so just, oh, okay, this is how there are different people. This is how you treat different people. This is how we're open to others. And they just catch on after a while.
That was going to be the number one thing I was going to say, is teach them in a way where they're not helping someone that's necessarily special or different. They're just
mhm,
teach them that everybody learns in their own way at their own pace.
Right.
So even if I'm understanding something and she's not, that doesn't mean that either one of us is any better or worse than the other. It's just that we all work in our own time.
Right.
So it's worked out for us very well, because while Adley's learning with the core boards and everything, Ava's walking around and pointing at him and reading words.
Mhm.
So it's helping her too. And with
Right.
her knowing those things, eventually she can help him. So it's just letting her know that everybody's going to learn. They're just going to do it in their own time.
Exactly.
mhm. That sounds great. And I love the fact that Ava is learning along with Adley at
Right.
the same time. I think that's wonderful. So then for parents who may feel guilty because there's have to spend so much time with the child who has more care needs than the other, how would you encourage them?
Take it day by day. um, just understanding that even if it wasn't a child with special needs, every child that you have has certain things that they need and that us as parents have to pour into. And so it's going to look different, in every way. So just having them understand that that's part of our role as a parent. And um, I think if you at an early age can teach the other siblings about what's going on, be open and have those real conversations, they'll understand that, mom and dad do have to spend a little bit of extra time because, they're unable to communicate their wants and needs how you are so easily able to do so. And so I think once you can incorporate other children or just other people within that journey, it helps to lessen some of the guilt that you may feel.
And just kind of kind of what I mentioned earlier, it's like I guilt is such a tricky way to put it sometimes. But it is a feeling that is hard to put away. But I've always had to tell myself, you know, I shouldn't feel guilty for something that wasn't purposely done necessarily. Like there's nothing that happened here that anybody necessarily wanted or asked for. I tell people all the time we were blessed with this. So, God thought that we were the ones that needed to take care of Adley. So, if anything, I'm honored. I don't have time to feel guilty.
Mhm.
Mhm.
But I also feel if you're spending time being guilty, that's time that's being missed that you could be helping any of the children. So it's really just about getting out of my own head and just making sure that what's in front of me is the kids, and that's what I'm focusing on.
And he reminds me so much, just to caveat off of that a little bit. I think it's so great to have a wife and a husband as a unit, because for men, they're very, from what I've seen, seen sometimes, it's like we're very factual. We don't have time to be sitting around crying to Sandra. You just don't have time to do that. So we've got to make a plan, and we've got to, get it done. And there were times in the past where it's just like, why us? Like, I don't understand. He's like, what, like, let's get it together, that we have a purpose, we have a reason. And so it's just nice to have both of those perspectives sometimes, in the household.
We trade off those roles a lot
We
because
do.
even going back to that first seizure at Walmart,
Hmm.
the whole time we pull over, she was in the back seat holding Adley.
Hmm.
So we pull over, I'm on the phone with 911, and the whole time I'm talking to them, she's outside the car, hysterical. Like, oh my God, my baby, and just freaking out. Eventually, eventually I said to Sandra, give me the baby. I said, go for a walk. And she walks off.
Right.
And the whole time I'm just like, I was honestly surprised myself, but in the moment, like the emotions to me just weren't there.
Hmm.
Like I was
Mhm.
just stoic. And then when I say we traded off, she rode with the paramedics. I drove to the hospital myself. And by the time I got to the hospital, Adley's laid up, tubes everywhere. And by this time, she's fine. I walked in and turned into a 2-year old myself. I was like, oh no. Like, and that's when I lost it. And then she had to come to me and be like, James, I see what they're doing. He's fine. And that's when I'm like, no, just look. And so we work well that way too, because it's like we know what the other person tends to need in a certain moment. So that's just that whole look, suck it up. We gotta go. So
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. I think it's very important that, couples work together, you know, when dealing with and, helping to raise and manage the needs of children with disabilities. Now, James, you mentioned earlier you were talking about God and faith. You all are Christians, right? And so how has your faith helped you in this parenting journey? Let's talk a little bit about that.
the number one for me is what I tell myself every day is that he doesn't make mistakes.
Mhm.
Um, we both needed Adley in our lives just as much as he needs us. And that's what I always keep in mind is Adley's here for a reason. And we're learning every day because of him. Family members around us, we both come from families where this has never really been a topic because nobody's had to deal with it. So because we were blessed with Adley, now our families get to learn more about autism and about epilepsy, ventriculomegaly, all these things that they either had never heard of, or a lot of times in our community people just refuse to talk about them. So now that it's right here in your face and Adley's running up to you and he wants a hug, now we have something that we're going to talk about because it's here for you every day.
Absolutely. For me, we suffered 2 miscarriages before having Adley. So Adley is my rainbow baby. He's our miracle
Mhm.
baby. And I tell people all the time, Adley spoke so much to me, in utero. I was so worried, especially at 20 weeks, knowing that he had this condition. When we were looking at the statistics the other day, 1% of
Mhm.
pregnancies result with children that have ventriculomegaly. So I remember just asking myself, like, why am I this 1%? And we did genetic testing beforehand. We did everything what we thought was right. We got married before. We just did everything the Christian way. And so we're trying to figure out why us in this journey. But that's where my faith came in. I had to have the faith of a mustard seed, literally, to make it through the pregnancy. And then COVID hit and all the things. And so, but it's just been such a blessing. And I just have seen how God has truly worked in our lives um, when it comes to Adley. So we've just had to have faith to make it to the point that we're at in this journey.
And I like that you were open about, some of the challenges that you kind of experience with your faith in the
Hmm.
process because, you know, um, that is something that is not talked about a lot about how, sometimes it can be challenging to your faith when you have a child with so many medical um, conditions and it gets really hard and like, okay, God, where are you? Has this increased your prayer life? Are you how has attending church been for you? What is that experience like as you practice your faith?
Yeah, definitely increased prayer life. I remember several times just even being in the hospital with Adley after he's had his episodes, just reading scripture, walking around the room, speaking in tongues, just looking at scripture and just praying over my baby, praying over the doctors that are coming in and hearing the diagnosis in one ear, but knowing God is speaking to me in the other ear saying, it's going to be okay. And that was the thing that Adley kept telling me in utero. It's going to be okay, mom. It's going to be okay. Church for us, we've not ventured out as much. As we've wanted to just because of his complex needs and just me feeling comfortable enough that people will really know how to handle Adley. Um, and but in dealing with my mom and just family, she's like, you guys need to
Mhm.
venture out and go to church. More churches are becoming more aware about special needs and autism. And so it's important for you guys to get out there and not be afraid to do so. So we are absolutely working on trying to um, find a church home that supports that ministry. But what we do in the meantime is usually Sunday mornings, worship music. We have
Live streams.
live streams. We'll watch church service. And just the other day, Ava was up. I was singing praise and worship. She's up raising her hands, so they're watching and paying attention. So just those little things to get them immersed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was that timing too. I mean, of course,
Hmm.
us building that strength to
Sure.
get Adley out there and everything. But even before the children were born, church was a regular thing. We did
Hmm.
have a regular church home that we went to, and
Yeah.
then COVID hit.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
from there, it pretty much just became virtual because, one, COVID itself. And then at that point, there's, very young children that
Right.
could also be susceptible. So we didn't want to chance that. But yes, that's what's been keeping us going now until we can find a new physical church home to
Right.
start going to.
Right.
And what would you want churches to know about your family as take that step to go out and visit churches? What do you want them to know about your family?
That we want to be there and we want our kids, especially Adley, to be welcomed and accepted by all church members. Um, our son is going to make noise. He's probably going to want to get up and move around or whatnot. And just having those children ministries that are equipped and know about autism or just any disabilities out there and that can adapt the instruction to in a way where it can be accessible to all children. So I would want churches to be open and just accepting of all people that walk into the building. Um, Anything else to add?
even though he's nonverbal, I can guarantee that Adley loves God just as much as everybody else in those buildings.
Right.
He might not be able to say it, but he's gonna make sure that you know his life is the story.
Right.
So
Right.
he's just take Adley for who he is. And to know him is to love him.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. So, having a child can change the dynamics of any marriage. So, that is especially true when you have a child with disabilities. What are some of the things that you have learned in this process? Like, how do you support each other and how do you work on your marriage between the two of you? And how do you find time for each other in the middle of caring for all of Adley's needs and Ava?
We have learned communication is huge.
Mhm.
So we're always good communicators, but I think having a child with special needs, um, we kind of talked about it a little bit earlier. As a mom, I process things differently than how dad may process things. And I may be hypersensitive to certain things that dad, may not be, or vice versa. So we've had to have some really real conversations with one another, and just kind of talk about what that care looks like on both ends. Um, we don't unfortunately get out for date night as much as we used to. We incorporate it more when the kids go to bed at 7 o'clock, 7:30. We may try to catch a show together, have dinner together, until we pass out for the next day. So those we try to just find little moments here and there to try to connect with one another. I know I saw the other day on social media, if you hug your partner for like 30 seconds each day, you can like feel their essence and just like connect. And so we try, after the kids go down, we'll kind of just look at each other and we'll be like,
Always.
I'm here.
Soon as
And we'll just like hold one another for just,
Bring it in.
yeah,
That's
just 30
literally what I
seconds.
say.
Yeah.
I'll say, bring it in.
And
Bring it
it's
in.
helped. It's just helped to connect us.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
those little things.
I think the biggest thing that I've learned, and I preach this all the time, is no matter how bad things get, and no matter how big of a village or support team we have, the one thing that we always have to remember in this house is that no matter what goes wrong, I am not your enemy. A
Hmm.
lot of times we might get frustrated and we'll lash out on the one person that we think is supposed to handle it because they're your spouse.
Mhm.
Like it's their job to take on that anger. And it's also our job to understand that we shouldn't throw our anger at them.
Mhm.
Like, if anything, let's try to figure out the root and try to fix it so that neither one of us has to be angry anymore. And I think that through our communication, that's what's helped that a lot, because early on it'd be really easy for us, as soon as you know something seems off with Adley, the first thing we might do is fuss at each other. Well, why didn't you? Or why didn't you? And instead, it's like, while we're fussing, he's over here not feeling well, so it's not helping anything.
Right.
So that's been a big one for me, is to remember that no matter how bad things get, they call this a partner for a reason, and
Mhm.
I have to make sure that I lean on that more often than not.
So, what do you want society to know about families like yours, and how can they make life easier for your family?
So my big thing is just be aware of what you're saying, what you're doing, and how you're treating others. Um, it's okay to ask questions, but with the questions being asked, just be mindful of what you may be saying to somebody else, because um, it could come across offensive
Insensitive. Yeah.
and insensitive in many ways. What we've started doing, just our family, is for the holidays we have started throwing little facts about autism, disabilities, inclusion, awareness to our families. So like last Christmas, we all wore shirts, that said, I love somebody with autism, or just something about diversity. And
Mhm.
we made sure to throw into our Christmas card something about be mindful throughout this year of others, be kind to others, inclusion. And we've talked about starting to throw in a statistic or something about autism or epilepsy or ventriculomegaly that people may not know about, just to keep on the forefront of minds. And so every time somebody looks at our card, we usually do a magnet, and in every household we've been in, we see our magnets on the fridge. But it's just another reminder of, like, if you see somebody that's different, or is unable to communicate, or has challenges walking, or whatever the case may be, hopefully your mind will go back to Adley and
Mhm.
and our family, and you'll just be a little bit kinder,
And
so.
just to motivate people to take it as a challenge on yourself.
Mhm.
If you are fully able, you're able bodied, you can do this and that. If he puts you in a position around someone that can't, there's a reason you're there. So just you can show your understanding by being a help. If this person needs assistance, ask if you can help, how you can help. Don't just assume that like this person is beneath you or any different just because they struggle to do things that you don't. That's your opportunity to show them that if I can, you can, and just lend that hand and just try to be helpful. If you're asking questions, just make sure that those questions, like kind of like Tasandra said, make sure they're from a genuine place. Make sure you're not just asking because you feel like that's what you're supposed to do. Like, just make sure that you're asking with the intention of learning something, whether it's about Adley or about anyone. That's what I would really want is just make sure that your curiosity, make sure that it's genuine, make sure that you're asking from a place of I really want to get to know this child or this person better. I want to gain a better understanding.
So, what are your hopes for Adley in the future?
I It's funny. I've been saying this for years, but I keep telling Cassandra and everybody else, I'm like, I've been having dreams for the last 3, 4 years where Adley just comes up and sits on the couch next to me and just starts like talking and will not stop talking. And some kind of way in every dream, it's revealed that he's 5 years old.
Mhm.
In every single dream, he's always been 5 years old. And Adley just turned 5 a little over a month ago. so
Okay.
So we'll say in the near future, I plan to hear my son's voice at some point this year.
Yes, absolutely.
But moving beyond that, I just want Adley to have, I don't even want to call it normal. I
Mhm.
want him to have his own life and understand his life and just grow to be able to at least try to do some things on his own. He may not be able to do everything that we can, but I just want him to, number one, understand who he is and understand why he's special, and to be able to use that to his advantage. Use that as motivation for yourself, whatever that may look like.
For me, Adley is probably the happiest kid I have ever met in my life. He doesn't get angry. He doesn't get sad, and that innocence and that joy, I want him to carry that on as he gets older. The world can be a cruel place, but I hope that that innocence continues to be bottled up, and he is just able to be that light in the world. Yeah, I want Adley to find what works for him in the future, and thrive off of that. Um, and that's really my hope for him, that he can just do what he enjoys doing and be happy.
Hey. Well, thank you so much, James and Tassandra, for joining us on today. I know that everyone who watches this will be blessed by the information that you have had to share with us in your own personal stories. Is there anything else that you would like to share with us that we haven't already discussed?
I feel like we've kind of alluded to it a few times, but just again, going off of what Tassandra just said, for anybody that might be going through something similar, if you ever feel down or frustrated or as if you're not enough for your child, just go look that child in the eyes. And I guarantee you will change your mind. Just like she said, Adley smiles at you, you forget every negative thing that happened that day
Mhm.
because he is just always so cheerful. And it's impossible to be in a bad mood around him. It really is. If it is, if you're able to, then we need to have a talk because it's just his joy is just unmatched and he's happy all the time. So that's just motivation.
Yeah. And I just want to encourage families that may be watching this, couples that may be watching this, to just hold on. The journey is tough. The journey is very tough. And a lot of people don't understand it unless you live it.
Hmm.
And I say that all the time. You can sympathize with us. However, it may be you won't really understand the journey because you're not living it. And so, those of us that are living it, just know that you're not alone. You have a tribe of people. There are resources out there. Um, we're in an age right now where technology is at our fingertips, and
Mhm.
so connect with groups on Facebook or Instagram or any of those platforms, just to find that community that you may need. So, I just want to encourage families and just remind people not to give up.
That actually just reminded me of one more thing. Speaking of social media and everything, about maybe about a year and a half, 2 years ago, I stumbled across a Facebook group as well that was specifically geared towards dads that have children with autism. And I thought that was interesting because usually I would either see just groups in general or groups geared towards moms. So I ended up joining the group, and long story short, it turned into this connection that I have with four other men, dads that live in the Atlanta area. And we're always at the fingertips, texting and chatting like, hey, what did you guys do when your son did this? Or, does your son do this? Like, I've never seen this before. And one of us will be like, oh, yeah, he does that all the time. Usually it means, and we're just throwing ideas off of each other. But it's one of those things where without technology, without social media, that never would have happened.
Yes, that's great. I love that you all shared about the importance of social media because that is another sense of community. You can, even if you are kind of maybe isolated in your local community, there is a huge community out there in social media that you can connect with, of people who are going through the same thing. Because a lot of times we get into this thought that, oh, well, I'm the only one, and there are so many others on this journey as well. And that's why we wanted to make sure that we highlighted your story because you have so much wonderful things to share. And we wish nothing but the best for you all and your family and for Adley.
Yeah. Thanks for having us.
Yes, thank
Yeah.
you.
The mission of the Autism Faith Network is to promote autism awareness, acceptance, and inclusion in local and faith based communities all over the world. If you haven't already, we would like for you to download our free activity toolkit, which contains a list of things that you can do to help your place of worship become more autism friendly. It can be found on our website at autismfaithnetwork.com. On the behalf of our board, thank you so much for joining us today. Have a blessed day.